For the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world, we are live and amplified. So let's get ready to podcast.
Fire it up.
Welcome, everybody, to another live and amplified livecast. I'm your host, Tom Quiet, and we are back at it again with another amazing podcast. Today, we have a very special guest. We have Jamie of Crookedforest, or it's all one and the same, correct? Jamie, right? Am I?
Yeah, it's all one and the same. I mean, it's all just me, so I just I split it up a little bit, but at the end of the day, it's just me.
Gotcha. Well, Jamie, I'm glad to have you on the podcast. I'm really excited to sit down and chat with you a little bit more. We had you on our PanCan fundraiser back in November. Got to talk with you a little bit, and I'm really excited to jump in and talk about the new release you had at the beginning of the year. I say the beginning of the year like it was a long time ago. It was like 6 days ago. But I'm really excited to sit down and chat with you about it. So thank you for taking the time out on this. I'm only going to assume by you, because you're in Canada, it is a brisk Saturday night.
Oh, man. Yeah, it's got really cold towards the end of this week. So it is, it's not nice out there.
Yeah, I'm in Central Texas. We've been 80 all last week. And then last weekend, it just started getting, or midweek some point, it just started getting really cold. And I think it was yesterday or Thursday, it was like 20 degrees. And it was like, oh no, winter is here.
Well, you're lucky you're just getting it now, because we've been in it for a little bit, I feel.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So for the people that are just getting introduced to you, kind of introduce yourself, your introduction to music, and just kind of like origin story, comic book #1 type stuff.
Cool. Yeah. So my name's Jamie Jacobzak, from just north of Toronto in Canada here. Started playing music when I was quite a bit younger. Played, started my first band in high school and that kind of thing. But I started working in professional recording studios when I was 17 years old. And I spent a number of years working for some very talented people. They're much more talented than I. And kind of my own like original music took a back burner seat over there for a while. And just recently, with the pandemic and with everything that came along with it, I started playing music again for myself. So now I'm doing a couple different projects. I have some acoustic projects. I have some full band projects. I say full band, but it's just me playing everything. And that's kind of where we're at right now.
Awesome. And so you're running a few different projects. How do you kind of balance them all creatively? Are they, do you write specifically for each project, or how does that kind of all figure?
Sort of, yeah. I mean, when I was first writing new songs again, I didn't have any particular project in mind for anything. I was just writing a bunch of different stuff. And then as I started thinking about, I'm going to start releasing stuff, and then I came up with Crookedforest, and I was like, okay, I'll throw some stuff out under Crookedforest. But then I had a bunch of these other songs that didn't quite fit what I was doing with Crookedforest. And even though it's still me and it's still my stories, then like a lot of that is the same. Mm-hmm. It just didn't seem to make sense to put them out under Crookedforest. It seemed like a silly thing to do. So instead I realized, okay, I have a certain amount of songs that kind of fit this different mold a little more. So I put them out under my own name. Mm-hmm. And then, right now I'm kind of working well with just those two. And I'm just getting like a little nervous that I'm going to reach a point where I'm going to be like, okay, now this doesn't quite fit Crookedforest, and it doesn't quite fit Jamie Jacobzak. So where does it belong? Yeah. And I don't know if I'm getting like too like titly about it. And it's kind of like, I don't know. It's confusing. Gotcha.
And then you also do Jimmy Eat World covers, right? Are you like a cover project for that?
Yeah. So that was like another offshoot project that like it didn't intend on necessarily being its own project. Before I was releasing any original music, I was like, okay, how am I going to promote myself to people that don't know me and don't know anything about me or what I like, what I sound like? Best way to do that, I think, is with cover songs of similar artists that I like, that maybe if they like this band, they might like what I do. That was the whole idea. And what I realized that as I was doing that project, which I'm still doing, it's like an ongoing thing that I try to do on a semi-weekly basis, is that I was doing like a lot of Jimmy Eat World songs. I was like, okay, we're reaching a point here where this too is also getting a little extreme. But then I was like, I really want to do this though. I really want to do like every single Jimmy Eat World song that they have ever produced, like everything across the board, including everything they've covered. And I thought it was kind of interesting because I thought, okay, what I could do is spin it from my own perspective as both a fan, but also as a woman singing the same lyrics and telling those stories from my point of view. And I thought it was just kind of a fun project. So yeah, so technically I have 3 projects, I guess, right now.
Nice. Well, I mean, the Jimmy Eat World cover project, that's just more of learning covers essentially, whereas the other 2 you have to like actively create new music for it.
Well, that's sort of the problem with that project is like when I first started it, I was like, okay, yeah, I can just like cover the songs, which I was like, cool, because I kind of hate practicing. I hate sitting down and be like, I got to learn how to do this new thing. But it was like, what a great way to do that is by picking songs you already enjoy. You're like, cool, this is much more enjoyable. That's how I started playing guitar. But then when I started to do it, I was like, I don't really want to do the songs the way that they recorded them. That's not going to really work for me. It's just not something I'm terribly interested in. I'm like, if you want to hear the songs the way the band recorded them, just listen to the band. Like don't listen to me then. Like, because it's not going to be nearly as good. Like, that's just too serious. And because I love producing music, I was like, okay, what would I have done if I was in the studio with Jimmy Eat World when they were crafting these songs? What would I do differently from all these songs? So none of the covers, in my opinion, sound anything like what they've done, which hopefully is interesting for fans of the bands for something a little different, or maybe it's not at all. And I get really worried when I put something out. I'm like, man, people are gonna hate this. Yeah.
So you're basically reimagining, right? Yeah, that's the word I want to use.
Totally,
no, that's really cool because it kind of gives it your own flavor. Like you're paying homage to a band, but by giving it your own flavor.
I mean, it's that's totally what I'm doing. But like sometimes I feel like it's kind of a cop out for me because it's just like then I don't have to strain my vocal to try to hit those notes the way that they hit them. I don't have to learn all those lines the way they play them.
Yeah, it happens. It's all good. So you got the 3 projects going on. Let's take a step back a little bit about who originally introduced you to music.
That's kind of hard to say. I guess it would just be it would be my family, I guess. But it wasn't like in a direct way. Like I don't come from a family that's necessarily like all about music in that, like no one else in my family plays music. But music has always been around. It's always been playing. My dad was really he's got a huge record collection. So he'd always be putting stuff on at any random point of the day. So I'd like kind of just take it in that way. Yeah. But it wasn't really until I like started getting into more modern rock and punk rock that I was like, okay, this is something I'm directly in some way interested in learning about. And it's funny if you hear what my siblings all listen to versus what I generally listen to. I mean, we all kind of listen to a bit of everything, but they listen to totally drastically different stuff than I do. And it's just like, it's all over the place.
Nice. Since we're kind of on that topic of conversation, outside of Jimmy Eat World, who are some of the other bands you're listening to for influence?
I jump around a lot, I find, but I kind of always settle back into like a lot of my favorites are bands like Sum 41 and like Trouble Charger, Blink-182, the pre-Matt Skiba days. Stuff like that. But I really jump around a lot. Like I love the Eagles and the Rolling Stones. And again, because of just like my dad's influence, I think I listen to stuff from all the way from the 50s straight forward to, I love like bands like Sam Roberts Band. They do lots of great stuff these days. And lots of other like Canadian bands, like Colorado was a great band when they were still active. All over the place, all over that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm starting to realize that a lot of musicians have a wide variety of influences, mainly due to their parents, just because like, oh, their dad listens to this, but mom listens to this. So just kind of depending on who you're in the car with or whatever the scenario is, that's who you're listening to. And then, yeah, So that's kind of a really interesting thing I've been learning over the last year or so, was all the various influences musicians have. So
Yeah, it's cool. Like when I was really young, like my sister and my mom and I would listen to like J-Lo and like Shania Twain. And then on the other hand, I'd be like, REM and whoever with my dad. Like so it'd be like really just a weird, and my brothers were into like new metal
yeah,
and like rap rock.
yeah, that's
So
funny.
a little bit of everything.
So funny. Yeah, that's kind of how it was. Like my dad was into like jazz and stuff like that. So we'd always have like the smooth jazz channel. My mom was into like classic rock, the Beatles, the Monkees,
Yeah.
Jethro Tull, just bands like that. And then I'd go hang out with my buddy and go with his parents' places. And his dad was into like all the alt rock stuff, like Cypress Hill, and just like old school heavy metal, and then like alt rock, which was really cool. And then his mom was like really into pop rock, so like um Maroon 5, just
Oh
stuff
yeah,
like
totally.
that. And so it was like, all right, I'm just getting the whole gamut of music here. So
Everything. Yeah, no, it's awesome. It's the best way, really, because it really just comes down to like your mood more than
yeah,
anything. Like sometimes, only Motown will do.
yeah.
Like nothing else will do.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. So you got a new song that you released Monday, right? Sunday was the second, right?
Yeah, sure. Let's go with that.
Yeah, let's go with it. That works. That's a website exclusive. What's the name of the song? What's kind of the idea behind it?
Yeah, so the new song is it's called Blister. It should really be called Blisters, but I always thought it was nicer sounding Blister. Um, but it's a cool song because for me, like half the song is one of the first songs like I ever wrote, like way, way, way back, and even just like the main kind of acoustic guitar rhythm that you hear in it is one of the first little like acoustic guitar rhythms that I ever played that I was like, oh, this is new and different. This is not something I just stole from somebody else, at the time.
Yeah.
And so it's half that song, which had just like never fully been realized in any way. It's just been sitting in my folders for years and years and years. And then in 2020, I ended up pulling it out, and I was like, okay, I'm going to try to finish this one finally. 15 years later, why not? And I ended up writing a lot about, at least what inspired a lot of what I was writing in it is the Black Lives Matter movement and the death of George Floyd specifically, and everything that kind of transpired after that moment. Because it was very like, it was insane. You remember, I'm sure, watching it on the news. Like I had CNN on like every single day.
That was my birthday weekend.
Oh no.
And my parents had come to visit. This was before my mom got sick, and they'd come out to visit me, and we, obviously being middle of the pandemic, one of the days we were eating, and we had the TV on, and we were just watching everything unfold. And it was like, yep, this world's never going to be the same. So
it was like, it was crazy because like it wasn't a particularly new story, like as far as what goes on in the world. Like this is not an uncommon thing, of course, but just the way it all kind of unfolded and so quickly, and then the video footage on top of that really like just took over everything. And I was addicted to the news for like a series of months, like in a way that I've never been addicted to news, like switching channels, trying to get different perspectives on what was going on. Because it was weird, because like with all that going on, then people started doing like protests in Toronto and everywhere else in the world, but it was COVID, so it's like I can't go anywhere. I can, but like I'm trying to follow the health protocols at the same time. So I was just watching it. I was like, this feels really crappy that all I can do is watch this go down. So I didn't know in any way like what to do, but I was like, I gotta learn more about what's going on with this stuff, because I feel like I'm just like way behind the times somehow. Anyway, so that's really what inspired the rest of that track. And then I was really super excited when a friend from college, Michael Chan, he said he wanted to play guitar on it, and I was like, wicked, because I was just, as much as I love doing all the different parts for stuff, it's like, come on, someone else take this for a minute. And it's just more exciting to see because he came up with some great parts that I would have never come up with for this song. Just when you're too close to it, you're too close to it. And then a new friend of mine who also drummed on Wasted Time, drummed on Blister. So it ended up being my first kind of more of a fuller collaborative effort in a very long time. So it's a really special song to me, just because of the whole way it came about. So I'm really excited for people to hear it. And yeah, you can only hear it on my website for now.
For now. Yeah. Gotcha. So you'd mentioned that you had started working on this about 15 years ago, and then with the pandemic and everything with George Floyd unfolding, that was kind of the catalyst to bring it back out, or had you already started working on it before everything kind of?
Well, yeah, no, it came out, I guess it would have been in the summer, so after it was all kind of unfolding. Yeah, because I wasn't even thinking about touching that song for the same reason that I wasn't doing anything under Jamie Jacobs Act for a while, because I was like, this is going to go into like a folk category or something.
Yeah.
So I didn't have a place for it. I didn't have a place for it until when we just finished it, just a month ago or something like that.
And how did it feel going back to revisit something that you wrote or started working on so long ago?
It was it's really funny to do that, and it's kind of again spiraled me into this weird terrible thing where I say terrible, it's not that bad, where I'm doing this with a lot of songs now, because I have like so many other old songs that just never saw the light of day, just because of like when I had my first band, we weren't promoting stuff on the internet the way we are now. Like it's just not, it wasn't a thing. So I'm doing this with a lot of older songs now. And on the one hand, sometimes I read something and I'm like, dude, like what's going on in your little head back then?
Yeah.
And some of it is just right awful. Just some of the worst writing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, some of it I'm like, that's not bad. Like you were doing okay. Like that's pretty good. And so it's been actually a lot of fun to revisit stuff. And I'm trying, for whatever reason, I'm trying as much as possible to keep the bulk of the way it was written back then, the way it was, because I'm just trying to I'm doing like this weird thing. It's like a project for myself where I'm like, because I never had the chance or the opportunity, or I never gave myself the opportunity to record these songs back then, I go back into it's like I play this weird game with myself. And this is how you know I've been spending too much time alone at home. Where I'm like, what would I have done if I was tracking this and I was still 17 when I wrote it? So I'm playing this weird, like going back into time thing. And I'm trying to maintain that. And I'm working also right now just on this note. My first band was called the Big Dumb Rocket Ship. Okay. we were a punk rock band. It's kind of like Taking Back Sunday meets Blink-182 meets Jimmy Eat World. Yeah. And I have like a bunch of these old songs that we used to play live, and I have all the lyrics still and everything. And I have a live CD that I have not brought myself to listen to. I kind of refuse right now because I know it sucks. I know it sucks so hard. But so I've started retracking the songs to the best of my recollection now.
Okay.
And then I'm gonna later pull them all out and play them side by side with the live recording from what my old band did, and see how close we got or how far we got from that. I don't know why I have to do these things, but it's like I have to do it to fulfill this old goal that just never saw the light of day.
Yep. 100%. I get it. I really do get it. It'd be quite funny though if you took the live album that you have, recreated all the songs to the best of your knowledge, and just re-released it as an album called Back in the Day or 17 again, like whatever it is.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I think that'd be really cool. Just kind of like a little homage to old Jamie, I guess. Or yeah.
Oh, it's gonna be bad though when I listen to it. Just trust me. And I was like the worst lead singer, I think, out of anybody. So it was not a good time. Gotcha.
So you're just kind of all over the place right now with all the different projects and ideas, which is amazing. Like I feel like that's what COVID did to a lot of people. It's just gave them a bunch of ideas, and now it's like trying to prioritize it's like, okay, what do I really want to do? Or what can I get done first? Or what can I actually get done? You know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's sort of impossible to choose. Like it's not a bad problem to have necessarily, but
Yeah.
it's also just like, yeah, it's one of those things where you're like, come on, settle down, pick a lane, you know?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I was looking through your website, and I like how you have all the instruments you can play listed, but under harmonica it says poorly.
Yeah, I'm actually really bad. I'm actually so bad. I want to be really good at harmonica. I've always wanted to be really good at harmonica
Yeah,
because I love Bob Dylan and like similar bands. Um, but I just haven't got there yet. It's a tricky instrument. Like
yeah.
I don't know if people think it's just like super easy or something, but it is not.
No, I've tried to learn tried to learn how to play the harmonica on 3 separate occasions, and it is not easy at all. Like, no,
But
I
you would really think it's easier because like there's only so much you can do.
yeah,
Really. but it's so hard.
it really is. It really, really is. Um, but yeah, I just thought that was kind of humorous when I saw that, because I like when musicians are self-aware about what they're good at, what they're not good at. So
Fair enough.
that's really cool. So Blister is up on the website. Is that working towards like an album, or you said it's a website exclusive for now? So that leads me to believe that something else is on the way, or
Yeah, I imagine. I mean, I don't really know. The truth is, I don't have a plan for anything I'm doing, which is why my releases are sporadic, and sometimes it's an EP, and sometimes it's a single, and sometimes it's whatever. Because I don't really know what I'm doing. Does anyone know what they're doing anymore? Because like I am so lost. It's insane. So I imagine at some point, it'll find a home in a collection of things. This is what I'm envisioning for it. But it hasn't found that home just yet.
Gotcha. Well, you'll find you'll figure it all out as you kind of go, because you mentioned that you just started picking up playing and writing during the pandemic because you were primarily focused on like the production aspect of things, right?
Well, I kind of took a leave from music entirely, like around when I was 24, 25. So like a good 5 years ago at least. I stopped working in studios. I stopped doing any sort of freelance gigs for the most part. And I did I played in a couple kind of random bands where I was playing bass for other people.
Yeah.
For like very short stints of time. And in that, it was like I here and there, it'd be like, okay, we know you also engineer, so can you also like just quickly mix this thing for us? But it was very sporadic. It wasn't like I was in any way like focused on this is my career again kind of thing. And I really, for a long time, didn't think I was going to come back to it like at all. But then with COVID, and I started working from home, which meant I had all of a sudden like an insane amount of time at my disposal, and again like just home by myself. But part of the problem with that was as soon as that moment hit, and I always said to myself, like, if I just had X amount of time, I could finally finish these things that I've had in the back of my head for all these years. And that seemed to like never be a thing that was going to happen. That was just never going to happen again. It was like you had your shot when you're 15, kid, and give it up. But
you're a little harsh on yourself then.
Well, I mean, I consider myself a realist.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, so I kind of like put away the dream. I did. It was gone. I was like, I'm done with this, and there's sick of all this stuff. And then I just had some financial hardship, and for a couple of years, so I slowly over time was pawning off my stuff, or selling this piece of gear, and there's like slowly I was like, but I will not give away my guitars. I'm like, no, I refuse. But I sold like almost everything that I had built up over years. So then the pandemic hit, and I was like, okay, I have the time to record these albums, and I have no gear. And I had like very little money, so I was like, shoot, like what have we done to ourselves? So it was this very weird transition sort of, I guess, where I was like, okay, I'm gonna just buy very small amount of gear, the smallest, the least amount of stuff I need to get some demos out, because I was like, okay, because of my background in professional studios, I'll just demo them at home for myself, not release them to anybody. And then I'll take them to a studio and do it properly when I have the time and put a band together.
Yeah.
But then the whole thing about like putting a band together again was impossible because of COVID. Yeah. So it's like it was like obstacle after obstacle after obstacle after obstacle. It's like, okay, I'm not making any headway here. So that's when I was like, okay, forget it. I'm just gonna MIDI program the drums. I'm just gonna learn how to play bass again. I'm just gonna relearn how to play guitar because I hadn't touched my guitar in like years.
Yeah.
And it was very daunting, but I was like, I can take my time and whatever. And I was surprised once I actually got into recording stuff again that I was like, oh, this sounds like a song now. It kind of sounds like a song, or at least it's heading that way. And I was like, this is exciting now. So now so I'm into it. And I never, one of the things about my first band is that I only played rhythm guitar and sang. I never played lead guitar like ever because the other guitar player never wanted to sing. So I never really had too much opportunity to play a ton of lead guitar. Yeah. So I wrote a lot of my first like guitar riffs during the start of the pandemic, like in 2020. And I wrote my first guitar solos in 2020, which you hear on my first EP. So that was like, those were all big moments for me because I was like, oh my God, it was like, they're kind of sloppy, but I did a thing. I did a thing that I've never done before. That's very exciting. But yeah, so now I'm still just sort of at this weird point where I'm like, I keep just jumping over these obstacles and like making it work, but I have there's no plan. There's no goalposts. There's no like anything. Yeah. I'm just hoping that at some point we start getting some better luck along the way.
Yeah. I will say, I really do enjoy your music and I'm excited to see what you have coming up. And like between that and the podcast and everything you got going on, luck's got to turn. I'm
hoping so. I'm really hoping so. It's trying times.
Yeah, for sure. I know the pain. Right before Christmas, my car practically died on me. And so now I had to take on a massive car payment. I can't really afford, like, I mean, I can make it work, but it's just like, oh, okay, well, here goes anything fun that I ever want to do again. So
I know that phrase all too well. Yeah, I can make it work. And then 8 years later, you're like, wow, I did not make it work.
Yeah. And so it's just like, oh, this sucks, but I'll get through it. But
I hope so.
Let's talk about the name Crookedforest a little bit, because that kind of, I'm of Polish descent, and so I know Crookedforest is an actual place that's out in Poland. I've obviously never been there because I'm
it's not on your number one list.
Honestly, I'm like second or third generation removed from Poland, so it's I haven't had any real reason to go there. So, but I'll let you kind of explain what Crookedforest is, why you decided to go with that as your the name of your one of your projects, we'll say.
Yeah, it was kind of a happy accident because I had some other names in mind before I settled on that one, and all the names I was kind of throwing around at the time were sort of location based in some way, and in some way tied that location to my family, even if it was a place I'd never been to. Mm-hmm. And then like I was just on Twitter, as I do, and like it just popped up as like a trending story or sort of like a news article or something that popped up randomly one evening. So I'd never heard of it either. I was like, okay, what's this all about? And yeah, so for anyone that doesn't know, the Crookedforest is just literally a forest in Poland. Mm-hmm. But it has like 400 trees that are shaped with a curved trunk, mm-hmm. which makes it very unique and special. but no one knows like why it's like that. And so as I was reading about this, and the articles about the Crooked Forest are very funny to me, the way that they're all phrased, because they're like, they make it sound like it's like this insanely magical, amazing place, and it's trees, you know. but I love that idea that it's like, we don't know why this is like this, but it's like this. It's the only place in the world like this. You can't find it anywhere else, and around it are just totally normal pine trees. So you wouldn't even know it's there unless you knew it was there and were heading towards it on purpose. And I thought that was kind of like a neat metaphor, I guess, for what I was doing at the time. Because it was just like, it's like one of those things, like everyone wants to feel like you're special and you're original and you're all these things. And a lot of the times when I write music, as much as it's just, you know, it sounds like me, and I know it's me doing something different to my ears, it's very easy to be like, well, you sound just like so-and-so, you sound just like this, you sound just like that sounds like a knockoff of this, whatever. It happens. But I like the Crooked Forest idea because it's like, well, no, this is distinctly one place, one thing that can only be like this. And I like to think of all people in this way, and I hope that all people think of themselves in this way, where it's, you are an individual person. There is literally no one else in the world with your makeup, with your life experience, with your voice, with your story, with all your creativity and anything else that you like to bring to the table. So it was a nice way for me to combine that idea with the music, but also because it's based in Poland, I was like, that's just a happy accident, like, because I'm Polish Canadian. And I'm only half Polish, just so very clear. But it's like, when you grow up in Canada, it's always like you're trying to find like kind of tether yourself to somewhere else that's like unless you're full blown Canadian. You're always like, no, well, I'm this and Canadian. So I've always had a strong desire to be more Polish, I guess. It's just the way to look at it. And I'm hoping one day to go there and to check it out and see what it's all about and see if it feels weird to be there and all mysterious and creepy. But yeah, that's how the name kind of came about. And it's just a bunch of happy accidents, just like the trees, I'm sure.
Yeah, for sure. It's, I too find myself wanting to accentuate the Polish side of my family, although it is probably only 30 some odd percent. I don't know how they figure all that out, but
yeah,
you know, it is what it is. But I know I probably got some like second or third cousins out there, because my grandpa had a brother or a uncle or something that still lives out there. Well,
nice.
Not still, but you know. So yeah, I definitely find myself in that same boat of wanting to experience the more Polish side of things, mainly because
I was gonna say, it's sort of like a common thing, like with Polish people in particular, like especially if you're like a history buff at all. Just because, like, for part of me, I guess why I've always been so interested in Polish history is because so much of my family, I don't know what happened to any of these people. Like, I know what happened to my grandmother and how she left Poland because of the war, and I know about how like a certain very particular people in my family got out of Poland. But for the most part, I don't know anything about my Polish relatives because something happened. Like, so again, it's a mystery.
Yeah, for sure. And I think for me, it's more of, I can't bring myself to forgive the German side of my family.
Oh, so you've got both.
Yes. Yes. So it's just kind of like, I'm gonna go Polish. They got better food. Polish got better food. I'm gonna just say it.
I believe that. I would say that. I mean, I'm just saying, anytime I go to a hot dog street vendor, I get the Polish one and not the German one.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. So I did just want to bring that up because it was kind of an interesting, when I was kind of reading through your website about how the Crooked Forest name for your band came up. I was like, oh yeah, I do. And when I saw that, I was like, oh yeah, there is a place in Poland that has this, because I remember back in my sophomore year of high school or something, I was reading an article about interesting places to go visit in the world, and I about 98% sure the Crooked Forest was one of those places.
Yeah, that's interesting. What also really makes me want to go there is I get really worried about like with with more. I mean, I don't know how popular it is with tourists. I can't imagine it's one of the most popular places in the world.
Yeah.
But I imagine like over time, it's like we go to any destination, then it's like things start to erode. Things get damaged from people being there. So I get nervous that I'm like, man, I'm gonna miss out on seeing a very like strange, unique thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could also do a Crooked Forest live acoustic video in the Crooked Forest.
See, now you're thinking the way I think.
Like this is literally the stuff I think about on a day in, day out basis. It's like,
oh, for sure.
Yeah, that would be cool.
That's what happens.
I think it would go over like 90% of the people's heads, but
absolutely, yeah, for sure. I had a dream that I was in the Crooked Forest recently.
Nice.
It was weird. It was a weird dream. Like I was just like walking in the woods with a friend, and in the dream it was like it felt weird, like I was in a weird forest where it's like very, very tall trees, and it was like kind of like not foggy, but it had like that sensibility of like a foggy, weird, sketchy forest. But then it was like we're almost there, and then we ended up at the Crooked Forest. But in the Crooked Forest in my dream, there ended up being like this weird museum, and there were like dogs in there and like all sorts. Anyway, we got a little out of hand after that, but I just thought it was funny. I was like, I think I'm thinking about this stuff too much.
I thought you were going to say there was a gingerbread house with a witch inviting you in. It's like, I think that's what's that?
It would be less weird, I think, than the way my dream went.
Okay. That's fair. It's like, yeah, I don't think you were in the Crooked Forest. I think you were reliving an old fairy tale there. So, no, that's funny. So Crooked Forest, you're just kind of now that the song's out, you're just kind of regrouping and figuring out what the next move is, or what's kind of the thoughts about the next few months.
Yeah, I'm really not sure. Okay. We're back under restrictions again here, which is great. It's not great. I don't know. Like it's not like I can do anything really anyways. But it definitely puts a weird damper on things, because it's like you can't really, again, I can't really move forward with putting a band together. I can't really go forward with thinking about studio time or any of that kind of stuff right now. So what I've just been doing is I'm just demoing out lots of new stuff, and I'm just gonna keep doing that, pushing as much so that at least then when I'm at that point where it makes more sense to put a band together and to put stuff and to go to a proper studio, because I really want to do a full-length Crooked Forest record, and I have like half the ideas for it. But I was like, okay, maybe if I can just kind of pull together 15 songs so I can decide from there, it'll make that transition a little more seamless. Otherwise, like I'll just get carried away again. So I'm doing that, and that's kind of keeping me pretty occupied. I'm trying to do more like live stream shows and get more of those, just because it's the only way to really get any sort of exposure for me right now. Sure. So it's all like acoustic stuff. And then just working on the Jimmy Eat World cover band project, which is all encompassing, and there's a lot more songs to go. So it's like there's no shortage of stuff for me to be recording right now, which is great. I'm just I'm getting to a point now with my little home studio setup where it's just not cutting it for me anymore. It was great and fun for the first 2 years of the pandemic, but it's like you're going into year 3 or whatever now.
That's so messed up that it's year 3 already. It's like
it's insane. It's actually insane, and like I just feel like I spend all my time in this room, like almost all my time, especially right now because it's winter, so it's like I don't like going outside right now. And it's hard to like get excited about anything. It's hard to like just get yourself motivated because it's like freezing and everything is just terrible and closed.
They just finally started letting us come back into the office for work, and so now it's just like when I'm home, it feels like I'm actually home and not just at work.
At least that's kind of nice, right? Like I kind of I'm in this terrible spot now where it's like now I've been home for so long. So I quit my job last summer, and I say quit, but it was like a very complicated situation and it was not ideal. And so now it's like I don't have a job. So at least before I kind of had a job, so I could keep myself busy with job stuff and then work on music stuff after. And that made sense to me. And I was able to break up my day a lot easier.
Mhm.
But now it's like I wake up, I'm still up early because I have dogs. And I kind of deal with them in the morning, but then it's just like, okay, what time do I want to start tracking something again?
Yeah.
And it's just very like, I don't know, like it's just really hard to get in the mood to do literally anything when you've been home this long.
Yep.
like I don't know, but at the same time, it's like, okay, I really need a job, and I've been job hunting like crazy. Like I've been pushing out to everywhere. Like I'm waiting, I'm hoping to God McDonald's gets back to me. Like I'm really hurting right now.
Yeah.
It's not a good time out there. But it's like I'm dying to get a job, but at the same time, I'm like, I'm gonna have to wake up and like go into a job.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have the opposite problem where I'm gonna be like, oh, Monday again.
Yeah, I got you. No, that makes sense. It's hard out there, and it's like I kind of found myself in that same position where it's like, oh, hey, I got the weekend. I need to get up and do something for the podcast or do something for Live and Amplified, or I need to start working on this. Like the radio show that we've ran reruns for the last month because I've been too lazy to cut a new episode. And so I just send the guy, I'm like, hey, we're going to rerun this. He's like, you sure? And I'm like, yeah, it's evergreen. We'll be fine.
It's fine. No problem.
And now we've gotten to the point where we've had somebody emailed us the other day, was like, hey, I think this show accidentally ran again and it wasn't supposed to. And I'm like,
you're like, oh no.
Crap. All right, now I got to get a new show done. So it is what it is.
It's tough right now.
But I know that pain. But at least you got a lot of options out there, and hopefully you can get the job, because it sucks having to have that financial stability at this point in the game. But it's just a fact of life, I guess, at this point, right?
Yeah, I mean, as much as I complain, and boy do I ever, like there's so many people that I know that have been in way worse situations than I'm in right now. So it's like I'm trying to just. It sucks when you have to justify things in your life in that way, when you're like, well, I could be in this predicament instead. Yeah. This would be much worse. It's like, yeah, it doesn't really help right now, but it's like, okay, good to check yourself, I guess, in that way.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I'm hoping for many of us, things will start to go back to some semblance of normalcy, because this is just weird. Like, I genuinely don't know what to do with myself half the time, and it's very confusing.
Yep. I was 100% agreed. But let's jump into the podcast a little bit, because your podcast, Sidebar, right? That's the full name of it. For some reason, I thought there was like a whole nother title section behind it. You've got a few episodes out. I haven't had a chance to listen to your most recent episode about the your experiences with a PR agent and stuff of that nature, but I really enjoyed specifically the Travis Scott when the whole Astro World. Well, I think we talked about this during the Bandcamp thing a little bit, but for whatever reason, just the way you put it together, I thought that was a really cool concept. Now, obviously, you can't continually do that, because then you're kind of waiting for situations to arise on a weekly basis, which during the pandemic probably isn't going to happen that frequently.
No, nor do I really want it to. That was a rough one.
Yeah, for sure. But what was the original idea for the podcast, and what did you kind of decide to start it?
I think, I mean, one of the main thing that really pushed me into doing it was I was finding myself like doing a lot of like kind of videos which would get a little lengthy, and I was like, okay, just because it's like I don't always know when to stop, and then I get like sidetracked and I get confused about where I left off, and it ends up being a 2-hour video for some reason. It's like, this does not need to happen. Yeah. But the reason I was doing any sort of videos was because I was like, okay, I have a bunch of music and stuff that I want to talk about and show people, but it's like I also want to talk about my experiences in the industry myself, because one of the things I noticed, like tons of different artists of all calibers were starting podcasts and stuff when the pandemic hit, because for the same reasons that I ended up being it, where it's like, I got some time and it's free. So I was like, okay, this is great. I'm all for everybody doing all this stuff. And like most people have like really good podcasts. But what I was constantly finding, and something I've regularly found in my experience in the music industry, is that I've never really come across people that have my specific kind of set of experiences. And which is to say, there's not very many women speaking out about this stuff. And part of that is out of a fear thing that they're going to lose their jobs. They're going to get called out. They get a lot of harassment. But I was like, I have nothing to lose because I don't work in the industry right now in a professional manner. So I have nothing to lose. I can just share all these old stories I have, and I have a lot. So it was partially because I wanted to bring my own perspective to the table, just to fill that kind of gap a little bit more. And continue to make that push for more women's voices in music. And I was also hoping like at some point down the line that I can again bring in other people and their voices and their experiences, because my voice and my experience is not the be all end all by any means. Trust me. But then again, because of just the circumstances and just getting things rolling, I was like, well, why are people going to want to be part of this? What's going to make this podcast a little different, I guess, than some of the other ones that are going out, aside from the fact that it's me. And I guess I was like, okay, I want to talk about some of these things going on in the news, some of the stuff that's happening that's topical. But like Twitter's not a great platform for it. And blogging it sort of works on a blog atmosphere, but I was like, do I want that to be on my whole life on my blog? Not really. So it seemed like a nice, easy way for me to be able to spend that time to talk about things from my perspective as they come up, and to offer my perspective on it in a way that also people can understand a little better. Because one of the problems I have with Twitter, as everybody does, is that so many people have like very poor reading comprehension, or it's just genuinely not clear because I'm being sarcastic, and that's like there's no sarcasm font, as I think Pat said recently.
And things get taken out of context too.
And things are wildly taken out of context. Like it's insane. There's absolutely no way to keep things in context on Twitter. It's very aggravating. Like even if you put it in a thread, it's like then the thread gets taken out of context somehow. I don't understand people. So it's just really hard. So I was like, this is the best way to do this kind of, to talk about stuff, especially when it's something that's a bit more of a hot button thing, like what happened with Travis Scott, which was nuts on Twitter. People were saying like, oh my God. So that's kind of what the idea came out from. It was just stuff that's music industry and music industry adjacent. And just my own way of talking about things and trying to put my own spin on it. It's not necessarily supposed to be funny at times, but sometimes it is, I guess. But I think I kind of take a like a late night talk show host vibe with it. And it's just fun to kind of explore that medium as well, as much as it's like, it's a little grating having to listen to my own voice as I'm editing it after the fact.
You're not the only person to say that.
Yeah, it's one of those things I guess we all have to get used to. It's like it never quite sounds just right, you know. Like it's just, you're always like, man, this sounds so stupid.
That's why I don't do any editing on this podcast. I literally just throw the intro in. I find the intro, I find the outro, and that's the podcast, because I cannot sit here to stand to listen to my dumb voice.
Oh, it's you're smart to do it that way, because I tell you, just doing the sidebar, so many times I'm just like, man, my inflection there is just you gotta redo like half a line. But it's funny. So yeah, it's just been it's an interesting way and a different way for me to get some ideas across. And also just, I just like exploring all these different mediums. Like a lot of these things are things I haven't ever really done in this way. So it's also just like for my own, to learn how to do something. Like my best way of learning how to do anything is to just do it. I can't sit there and watch tutorials or do all that stuff. I'm like, I'm just gonna run with it and hopefully it sticks.
For sure. Now, have you thought about adding different types of episodes? Because I know like you're very, I don't want to say sporadic with the releasing of the episodes, but it's just very I'm going to say sporadic because that's the best word I can come up with. Have you thought about bringing in different types of episodes, whether it's like doing music reviews or like the standard interview stuff? Yeah, that works. But if it's not what you're going for, then it's not what you're going for. But have you thought about bringing in different types of shows just so you can kind of release consistently?
Yeah, I mean, my biggest thing is I keep saying to myself, I should really just sit down and build a schedule of some sort, because I that's the other way I work best is by just committing to a deadline and just saying it has to get done. Otherwise, like almost nothing I do gets done. So I keep saying I should probably do that, but then at the same time, I guess that's like one of those problems where it's like I have, again, too many things on the go and not enough. I have no structure. I have no structure. So it's like I try to build myself structure, but then that goes to the wayside real fast.
Yep.
But yeah, so I'm hoping to ease into it a bit more. I wasn't really sure. Again, I wasn't really sure what I was like doing or how I wanted to present it when I first did the first couple episodes. But I think I'm kind of getting a bit of a rhythm going for it now. So yeah, I'm hoping there should be some consistency coming up in the future at some point, because honestly I need it. Like it's really bad. If I don't have a schedule, it's just a mess.
Yeah, I got you. I will say you're very natural on the podcast. It sounds amazing. I really enjoy listening to it when I can. The only downside is it's like a 7-minute drive to work, so it's like it's so hard for me to listen to podcasts in that time span, because it's like, oh, we just got to the good part and now I got to go to work or whatever. And so
I hear you. It's kind of that's part of the reason why like mine are pretty short, and that's like also by design, because like every other podcast I listen to is all like an hour, 2 hours long, and I'm just like, I don't have time for this many movies. Like it's a lot of time to commit to something, and I like to listen to everything all in one chunk if I can. So it's like then it becomes my other problem where I'm like, I got to schedule time to listen to all these other people.
Yeah, for sure.
Again, it's not really a problem, but like yeah, so I try to keep mine at least on the 20-minute mark.
Gotcha. Awesome. Well, I'm really excited to see how the podcast kind of evolves and where you take it from here, as well as your music. And obviously you kind of mentioned that you're all over the place when it comes to the music and just everything in general, because you've got so many different irons in the fire, which is a good problem to have. We'll preface that a little bit. So as far as musically, you brought up that you do some live stream shows. Are you doing that on Twitch, Facebook? Where are you doing that usually?
I'm doing them mostly on Twitch. I kind of experimented a bit last year doing them a little everywhere just to see the difference. Again, there's probably just part of me that just hasn't committed the time to learning all the different platforms properly. But I like Twitch. I think it's a nice interface to use. So those are back as of tomorrow, and they should be consistently on Sundays from 12 to 2 Eastern. And those are sort of a mixed bag thing, or I just do a bunch of different acoustic things. Sometimes I do covers, sometimes I do originals, mostly originals these days. And I sometimes talk about random stuff. It's like a sidebar to the sidebar. Really just depends on my mood more than anything. Because I don't make an agenda for it. I keep saying I'm going to do that too, and it just doesn't make sense to right now. And I do a couple things on like sessions live as well. So sometimes I do like music festival slots, which are pretty quick on sessions live if anyone's on there. But yeah, I'm hoping to do a lot more of those. I'm going to also try to do a once a month Jimmy Eat World cover song Twitch stream, just again to separate it from the other ones.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm just kind of trying to do as much as I can from the confines of my bedroom here, and see how much attention we can kind of get onto things going forward.
Yeah, for sure. It sucks that you guys are back on. I'm not going to say lockdown, just mandates, right? Mandates and restrictions. It's that kind of what it is.
Yeah, it's but like a lot of things. I mean, I mean, a lot of things are closed, so it's it definitely feels it feels more restrictive than they make it sound sometimes, for sure.
Yeah, gotcha.
But yeah, we're back on that, and I imagine we will be until at least like mid end of February, early
Yeah,
March, just because of the weather.
yeah,
So I
gotcha.
guess we're hoping for some good news come the spring.
Yeah, for sure. It's I know for my work, if you hadn't been moved back into the office by the first of the year, they pushed it to the end of the month. And I kind of have a feeling that's going to get moved to February, maybe March sometime, just because just kind of seeing how things are unraveling. And in the back of my mind, it's like, man, I really hope they don't send us home again. Like, I mean, I wouldn't mind working from home again because I really did enjoy. Oh, I've got a meeting at 10 o'clock. I could roll out of bed at 9:55
Yeah,
and be on time. And
absolutely.
it's not a thing. So, but then again, being able to separate from being from home, being at home versus being at work is a very nice mental.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So,
no, absolutely. I hear you for sure. Like that's one of the biggest problems with this is because almost like everything I do is in my bedroom. So it's like I'm sleeping here, I'm working here, I'm playing here, I'm doing shows here. So
yeah.
there's like it's gone an extreme where I now have I purposely changed my outfit for like live stream shows
Yeah.
to make it feel like I'm doing a gig. Like I wore shoes, like I wore actual shoes just to make it feel like I was actually out.
Yeah.
But it's insane. And then I catch myself like bringing my lunch up here sometimes and I'm like, oh my god, like stop. Like
Yeah.
just stop.
Take a scene change. Eat your lunch somewhere else.
I know, but I don't know. And then it's like it's like it's my comfort zone now at this point where I do everything here, so I'm just so used to being here. But then yeah, you go stir crazy by the end of the week. You're like, wow, I'm gonna flip out.
Yep. I'm right there with you. I'm right there with. So have you had a chance to play live shows out at venues since the pandemic, or since the pandemic kind of started letting up?
I did literally one
Okay.
last in the fall. I don't even know what month that was. I don't know what month it was. It was in the
We'll
fall.
say September. How about September?
That sounds pretty good. Yeah,
Okay.
that sounds pretty good. Yeah, literally just one. But it's like it's been really rough in the live music scene here because like a bunch of venues have closed down entirely. Like they were just gone.
Mhm.
The ones that are still existing, it's like okay, then they have been under the control of the government as far as what they can do or not do. Half of them are like, we're not even going to bother and risk it at this point. Then the other half are like trying to fit all these old tour dates in, and then you get all excited for tour dates, and then those get canceled at the last minute.
Yep.
So I was supposed to have a gig just like Thursday night, like a proper gig, and that got canceled. So it's just like, so it's like impossible to even like you don't even want to book anything at this point. You're like you'd rather just wait it out. So I don't think there will be any more of that until the spring and summer of this year. And then the problem with that is there's now a backlog of like 2 years worth of gigs for other artists who are much more reputable than I am. So it's going to be impossible to get a spot.
Yep.
So I'm hoping more for I keep looking just at like street festivals and stuff, and as those open up, and it's tricky times. But yeah, I did one last year and it was a lot of fun, even though it was a weird show. It was a really sort of uncomfortable show, but I was just so happy to be out and about for the first time in so long.
What made it a weird show? I'm kind of intrigued now.
It was like so it was in Roncesvalles, which is the Polish neighborhood in Toronto, or it's what is supposed to be the Polish neighborhood. I think there's literally 2 Polish restaurants left and maybe 1 Polish bakery. So it's like you're dwindling.
Yeah.
But I love that area. I used to go down there all the time. I used to live in the area. But yeah, so it was a comedy show that was put on by this local comedian. He does them very regularly, these comedy shows.
Mhm.
And then within the comedy show, he usually gets 3 musical acts. So like at the beginning, middle, and end, there's a musical act, and then there's a bunch of comics throughout. So on the one hand, like I was really excited because I love comedy. Um, and there ended up being something like at least like 15 comics through the night or more. Like I don't even know. It was a lot, and they're all like short sets, like 10 minutes, 15
Mhm.
minutes. And my set was only 15 minutes too, so it was only like a 2-hour show throughout. But I was really excited just because it was my first time playing as a solo artist, um, and to be there with all these comics. But on the comics were just like, I mean, everyone's comedy is subjective.
Mhm.
And I don't want to get too graphic into what they were talking about, but they were just getting like a little too. I don't even want to say it. I don't even want to
Yeah.
say what the content
I know where you're going. I know where you're going.
of it. So the thing about it wasn't like that was like 3 of the comics that were like that were like this raunchy comics. They were all like that, and to the point where I started to feel like I was hearing the same jokes that were the same bad, terrible, raunchy jokes.
Yeah.
And I ended up being last, so I had to sit through 2 hours of these guys, and I was just like, and part of them were like half of them didn't like half the crowd.
Yeah.
So they were like heckling the crowd. But then the problem with that, and I get that's like part of the vibe, I guess, but it was just like heckling is normal at comedy shows, and then you should expect it as a comic. But when the comics, are constantly berating the audience, and then you're surprised that they are not taking to your comedy,
Yeah.
there's a problem. There's a disconnect here for why you guys are on stage.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
Yep.
so just from like a personal, like my personal feeling about the whole thing, I was like, man, this show sucks and I have to finish it. But that all being said, I had a lot of fun when I did play my set, and the main comics really enjoyed my set, and they wanted me to keep playing, and I was like, I am out of here, dude. I am so gone. So it was something. I was just excited to be out there.
Yeah, for sure. You know, it's that thing where it's like you mentioned earlier, where now there's such a backlog of shows where bigger name acts need to make up gigs, and so need to make up their shows, so they're going into smaller venues if need be, and so all the independent musicians are just kind of, I don't want to use the word stuck, but I'm going to. They're stuck taking shows that they wouldn't normally take. Hence, this show that you had been talking about, and yeah,
it's not ideal. I mean, I'm starting to think about busking and and how I can make my mark on the busking market, because that seems to be where I'm heading at this point.
What is the, like, because I know at least here in the States, it's like from city to city, busking is kind of managed differently. How does it work in Canada, Toronto?
Yeah, it's probably, well, I guess it depends on the state, but yeah, it's basically it's permits. You have to get permits through the city in order to do it. And then that's a bit of a nightmare too. So half the street buskers, at least as far as the musician goes, try to just not bother with the permits at all, and you just hedge your bets on it.
Yeah.
It's amazing how many government employees are around just trying to get you to stop busking in this city. It's not very well received.
Mm-hmm.
And the people that have been doing it, like, have been doing it for years. So it's like all the same people.
Yeah.
Like even this market, like even the busking market is saturated.
That's, yeah. I mean, they're like where I grew up in Chicago, I know you had to get permits if you were on city property, mainly like the city like I grew up in Chicago. And so like all the trains and stuff, you had to have like permits to play in the train, not tunnels, but like by the trains where they get on. Yeah. I can't think of what it's called.
Oh, by the station and stuff.
Yeah, the station. Like if you want to play by the station and stuff, you needed to have a permit. But other than that, a lot of the other places, they say you need permits, but it's just kind of like you're going to play, and then if you're not supposed to be playing there, they're going to tell you to leave. Like that's pretty much it.
That's pretty much what it comes down to. So at least that should work to my benefit if I just have my acoustic guitar and I'm like, sure, I'll just take a walk over to this park instead.
Until they figure it out and they start following you around and all that stuff. And it's like, you get to the point where it's like, I just set up and they're already telling me to leave.
Yeah. It's really it's like they're like the parking meter people. It's like they just pop up and you're like, where did you even come from? Like,
Yeah.
come on.
Yep. I get it completely. So well, I don't want to keep you too much longer. So just kind of moving forward, you're working towards hopefully another album with Crookedforest as you're kind of in the process of gathering music. What's that process been like of trying to figure out what you want to do next?
It's the part I'm sort of stuck on right now is just I've been thinking a lot about the songs I have released and why I've released the ones I have, and it's really because I want to make sure that my official full length record is like, I don't want to say that these have been improper releases or anything like that, or make them sound like they're less than that they can hear me and they're offended. But I'd really like to have a really nice, polished, so to speak, studio recording of everything and do it properly with live drums. And because I'm just, MIDI drums, they're fine, but they're not a live drum room. And there's a big thing. That's like the biggest thing I think that is missing from my heart and soul these days. So I'd really like to do that, but more important than even the production quality of everything is what I want to narrow down the most important stories to tell for me for my debut. Like what do I think needs to be said right now, or what do I really want to kind of put away? Because it's the nice part about releasing these songs out into the world that's different than just writing and finishing them and having them sit on a hard drive, is it really does feel like a weight off your shoulders when you're like, someone else can take this and like it or not like it, or just take it in. And for some reason that feels very cathartic to me. Even if they never say anything to me about it, it's just knowing that it's been said and it's out there and it's out loud. But yeah, the biggest thing is just kind of deciding what are those critical stories for me personally right now that there's a reason that I don't have the songs decided on right now. Like there's got to be some sort of cohesiveness to them as well. But it's just at the end of the day, it's what do I want to tell the world? And if this is the very first thing they ever hear from me, which it might be for very many people, what do I want them to think and say by the time it's all done?
Yeah, for sure. One side tangent before we kind of wrap this up. I really appreciate the fact that you said you prefer live drums instead of using a MIDI, because I remember the first experience I had with a band that decided, or when we first started doing Live and Amplified, I was living out in Roswell, New Mexico. There was a band that we worked with early on. They had never recorded anything in a studio. And after we worked with them a little bit, they went up to a studio and recorded. Well, the engineer thought he knew best, told the drummer, hey, you don't have to worry about coming in. I'm going to just MIDI the drums in myself. And unbeknownst to me, I didn't know this whole story. I didn't know this whole thing happened. And they're like, hey, man, new album's out. If you want to listen to it, here's a copy. And so I'm listening to it. And after I get done listening to it, I called the drummer because he was the one that I knew the best out of the group. It's like, hey, man, really like the music, but what's going on with the drums here? They sound lifeless and too pristine, because the way he plays a little bit more inconsistent is the word I will use. And I was just like, hey, man, what's going on here? He's like, oh, that's not me on the drums. And I'm like, wait, what? He's like, yeah, they just pre-programmed the drums and they're using a MIDI. And I'm like, that sucks. That is the worst.
Also, like, man, I would never be okay with that if I was a drummer. I feel I'd be like, oh, thank you.
Yeah. Well, like, it was one of those things where they were paid all this money to go to the studio, and the studio engineer, producer, whoever it was like, no, I can do it better.
See, I hate engineers like that. And there's so many of them. There's too many of them, to be honest. Because there's also like so many engineers and so many stories I've heard of, like say like the bassist comes in, just tracks his bass, and then later the engineer will go and like retrack the bass. And it's like the bassist wouldn't actually know, assuming it's the same notes and everything. But it's like, how crappy of you to take that from somebody. Like that's to me is like that's like a cardinal sin. You just don't do that.
Mhm.
It sounds crappy. It sounds a little crappy. That's it.
Yeah. There's a lot of sleazy engineers. There's a lot of really good engineers. I'm not dogging all the engineers, because Jeff, my good buddy and partner in this, he's an engineer. So I'm not trying not to dog people, but I've heard stories of engineers and producers just doing the most sleaziest shit I've ever heard. And it's yeah.
Dude,
So,
I've been in the room with these people and I've been like, I'm not supposed to say anything.
Yeah.
It's just like very uncomfortable. Like,
a musician was telling me a story about how she went in. She was a solo acoustic act. It was just her and her guitar. She went in, recorded an EP, paid this guy whatever money. They agreed to whatever the deal was. She gets the rough edits, and it's got like drums, it's got like all these different instruments and stuff. And she's like, "Oh wow, where'd you get all? Or like, what'd you do?" He's like, "Oh well, I just think, and came up with this whole story." And when it came time to square up, it was like 5 times more than what they agreed to. And he refused to give her the masters until she paid. And it's like, no, just take it back to the acoustic, what we agreed to. I don't need all this extra stuff. And he's like, nope, I can't do that. Yeah. He's like, nope, I can't do that. So pay me or don't get your music. And it's like, no, you're a sleazeball for that one. So
that's brutal. I don't know. I can't understand those types of engineers and stuff because I've just never been that person. Like I've always 100% put like almost all the decision making into the hands of the artist I was working with. Because it's just, cause to me, I'm like, if I'm here paying for studio time, then it's my project, it's my vision at the end of the day. So it's like you might be co-producing or whatever you think you're doing, but it's not your music, it's not your art. So you can't go and arbitrarily make all these decisions. And like I don't understand producers that are so like, no, yeah, you should definitely do it this way, you should trust me because of all my years of worldly experience. Like I've never even worked for producers that were like that, and these are like known producers and not like whatever. So I just don't get people that I hate when people just do that, man. It just bugs me.
I'm in the same boat. I'm right there with you. But just kind of to wrap this whole thing up, once again, I want to thank you for jumping on here and sitting down and chatting, and hopefully we can get you back on later on down the road as things hopefully start opening back up here real soon and shows start happening, and you kind of get back into the studio, a proper studio, and recording your album and all that fun stuff. But just kind of walking to the end, what's the plan for the next 90 days or so?
Oof, that's a tough one.
Was that the hardest question I've asked all night?
It might have been, yeah. I don't really think that far ahead.
Fair. I guess that's fair.
No, yeah, the plan is definitely I'm gonna get back into the Twitch streams. We're doing that. I'm trying to do more. I want to at some point get better at live streaming some of the sessions I'm doing in a bit more to give people more of that the kind of inside look or whatever of what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. Because again, I know there's tons of people that do this stuff on the internet that are like, here, learn how to use this reverb. But I find them very I don't like the way people show this stuff.
Yeah.
Because I find like so few of them are showing them like in a songwriting context of like starting from nothing and building to something. So I'd really like to start doing more of that too. And again, this is just like I have way too many ideas and too many free days right now. So hopefully I start doing that a little bit. But again, it's all in the name of just like having different unique ways of showcasing what I do, what I'm up to. Because I feel like if I exclusively did, a Sunday Twitch stream or exclusively did a podcast, like that, people would tire of me, or I would tire of me doing that. So yeah, that's kind of the plan. But yeah, just live stream shows, and I'm going to release more music. I'm sure of it, even if they're just like demo cuts on the website and stuff like that. And yeah, just work towards at some point, again, I got to put a band together. I got to get some stuff rolling properly here. Again, I love it's really fun that when you're able to like do stuff on your own, but it's a whole other animal to do with other people. So I'd really like to do a bit more collaborating.
Yeah, for sure. It's a whole different thing when you're trying to incorporate a band into live shows and
Totally
all that stuff. Because then it's like 5 different schedules or how many ever different people you have in the band. Yeah, it's a whole
I'm a little terrified for that part because that's the other nice part where it's just like, am I free tomorrow at noon? I am. Great.
Yeah.
I don't have to check with anybody, which is great.
For sure. But once again, thank you so much for joining us. If anybody wants to check out the Blister or anything else you got going on, or the Twitch live streams, where's the best place to get all that information?
Best place is to go to my website directly at www.crookedforest.ca, and through there you can find all my social media channels and everywhere else that you might find content.
Awesome. Well, once again, thank you so much for jumping on here and chatting with us tonight. I know we'd been trying for a little bit to get the podcast, like a full-length podcast, up and running, but I'm glad we finally got you on here, and hopefully we'll have you back on later in the year and talking about a whole brand new project for you.
Hopefully, yeah. Thanks so much for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Once again, thank you everybody for joining us, and we will catch you all later.